26, yeah, 1926. We bought some hay from him for the horses. We used to be logging south of Rossland. We bought hay.
Who was we?
Dad and I.
Oh, you're in your dad. Mm-hmm. When would that be?
1926.
1920. Well, what was he doing? What?
Oh, well, he had sold off his herd of cattle, and they had a baler out here. And he didn't have cattle, he didn't live off his cows anymore. He used to just cut his hay and sell his hay, and he used to trap in the wintertime. Then in the summertime, he used to road foreman on this piece of road from the highway up to the Christie place. Mattered about 5 miles, and all the neighbors used to work on the road. And then he used to be in charge of the fires when there was a fire.
What was about this trap line that you
that he had? He had the trap line that took in all of the drainage of Sheep Creek. At one time he had it clean down to Northport, which is about 14 miles on the American side of the border, as well as the Canadian line. But he lost that after 1918, he told me, after the war in 1918. Mm-hmm. Americans took the American part away, but the Canadian part was one of the oldest registered trap lines in the province of British Columbia. And when he died, his wife acquired the line, and then Gunnar Erickson and I bought her trap line from her in 1944-45.
You've been running it ever since?
Yes, I look after this end of it. Gunnar trapped on the other end of it. Then we acquired the old Tom Mulligan line that was Judge Pluman's line, or several lines tied together in there. In those days, there was good money on a trap line. After the war, I made $1,800 in 6 weeks around home here, practically.
What mostly?
Mink and beaver, a few bobcats, mostly mink and beaver.
Well, you were telling me once about a town site here.
Oh, yes. That's the old town site of Melville. It was just off the Dudney Trail over in Big Sheep Creek on the flat, pretty near down to the border. Joe Gill bought that old works, I don't know, in the early 20s, along about then.
Well, is there anything there, any evidence of a town site? Is there anything that would tell you, other than the fact that it's called one, that there ever was anyone there?
No, there's nothing left now. The only thing that might give the impression that somebody tried to do something there is an old dike along the creek. It's an old cribbing that was made of wood and then filled with rocks and drift bolted together. There's evidence of that yet. It still holds the creek over.
Well, did you ever talk to Ben Shaw about this? Did he remember anything of it?
He told me about the old hotel that was over there. He said he was their best customer, or their only customer, I forget which.
Did they have a beer parlor and so on?
No, they didn't monkey with beer. They had hard liquor.
I see.
Although I did find an old beer bottle there. I guess they had beer there too, but I found an old beer bottle there. And then when I came here, they had torn up the floor in it because a cow had fallen into the basement. And there were a few of the old logs around it when I came, but that's all gone now.
There's nothing left then?
Nothing left now, no.
No evidence of where the hotel was or anything?
No.
Do you know where it was?
Yes, I know where it was.
Very often an interesting spot to find in an old town site is the old garbage dump. I wonder where that would be.
I don't think this town got quite that far.
Not big enough they left their garbage wherever it lay.
Yes. No, they just started it. You see, in those days there were a lot of people worked at the Velvet Mine. There was a lot of mining activity in here. At one time they thought the Great Northern Railroad would come up through here. When I came here, of course, there were 30-some people on the voters list.
Mm-hmm.
It was quite a little district here. I don't know what everybody did for a living, but they all seemed to be making out all right.
Well, when you first came here, who were the settlers in the area? Who lived here?
There was Fredlins, Mr. and Mrs. Anderson, and
which Anderson would that be? What was his name?
Emil Anderson.
Emil Anderson. Mm-hmm. Do they have any relatives left here?
Yes, Mrs. Anderson lives in Rossland, and so does her boy Mervyn. He worked for a while for the school board. Mm-hmm. They live on Kootenai Avenue, I think. And then there was Fred Fredlin, that was Mrs. Anderson's brother. They were cutting wood down here, and they used to haul that wood to town and sell it. Then they used to sell butter and dairy products. Then there was old Sammy Lavick. He was kind of crippled up in the mines, but he lived below here. Then there was the two Broster boys. I think one of them was a baker, and the other one had been in the mounted police force up in the Yukon in the gold rush days. I think he was a champion boxer one time. There was the Gill family. There was Mr. and Mrs. Gill.
That was Joe Gill, isn't it?
That. Then there was Joe, and Portland, and Charlie, and Lily. Lizzie was married in town. She married Sir Evans. She was in town. And then there was the Wilsons, W.D. Wilson. He was member of Parliament. And then there was Ben Shaw and Mrs. Shaw. And then in a cabin staying there was Fred Parent. And then there was Siemens out here. They were logging. They had quite a little logging crew taking up poles. There was old A.D. Christie up above that, and we acquired his property.
Well, you came here, just you and your dad together, or you and your dad and more of the family, or what?
Dad came out here to take out poles. He was taking out poles.
Where did your dad come from there?
Ontario.
Okay, what part of Ontario?
Mount Forest.
Mount Forest.
Yes. His father had a sawmill and a shingle mill there. In fact, it had been his father's father who built it first.
And you came here directly from Ontario?
Oh, no. He came into the East Kootenays. He was woods boss for the CPR one time. Wardner. He was woods boss. He came out with his brother. His brother had quite a logging operation there.
What were their names, first names?
My father's name was David. My uncle's name was William. And then he had another brother, Sam, that was well known in the Kootenays. He worked for Waldy's as a softballer for years. At one time he ran the stage from New Denver from Spokane City to Nelson. He owned a hotel at Castlegar.
Which hotel was that?
The Castlegar Hotel.
Castlegar Hotel.
Yeah, I think he sold it for $3,400. I understand a few years ago it sold for $100,000.
Mm-hmm. Same hotel.
Same hotel. Only now they're making money selling beer.
Yeah. Well, your dad came here to cut poles, did he? On his own? For some.
Well, actually, he came out here to skid poles for LePage.
Right.
And I was on the prairie when he came out here, but then, he thought he was going to have a good do here with these poles. And there were thousands and thousands of dry cedar poles. We thought there was going to be sale for those dry poles. That's what brought us out here. But then that bubble broke, so we skidded poles for seamen for the winter. And in the spring, I jumped the border and got a job driving logs on the river with the Long Lake Lumber Company. I made a few dollars on that, and then I got the timber on the Christie place by lease from A.D. Christie, and we went into pole business. And Dad bought a sawmill from some Americans who were up here. We worked on that until the Depression came. Then our sawmill was burnt down, our pile of logs, a bunch of 3-inch plank that we'd made for the government. We had to start all over again. And Depression practice, and I would work at this. And I worked there until 1944. Then I quit the small room. I really figured on just taking out a little timber and propping. But then in a moment of weakness, I bought this place, and I've had to work ever since. Dan McGilvey, he was an interesting old codger. He stood well over 6 feet. He was policeman in this town, I understand, for 2 years. From what I understand, he's only made about 4 arrests. And if he caught 2 people fighting, he'd let them fight. And then he'd lick the winner. That's how he settled it. If he saw somebody drunk, he took him under his arm and packed him home. His brother was killed in the mines in Montana. Dan went down and helped dig out his brother and then came home to Rossland. One time he used to live up on Washington Street, just above First Avenue, in a 2-story house. There was a Swede came to this town, thought he was pretty tough, and he broke in on old Dan one night. Dan was in bed, and he hammered on the door and says, "Let me in." And Dan says, "Go away." And he hammered some more. Dan says, "You come in here, you'll be a sorry boy." Ooh. But he still thought he wanted in, so Dan got up, and he opened the door, and the Swede barreled in there like a mad bull. Dan grabbed him by the back of the neck and the ass of the pants, and he heaved him out the window, and then he climbed back into bed. The Swede didn't bother coming up, and Dan didn't bother looking out to see if he lit. And that was that. And when poor Dan got old, he went up to Kamloops, to the old man's home. And he stole a blanket from there. I guess it was the only thing that old man ever stole in his life. And he walked home from there to Rossland to die in Rossland. And some of us old timers took up a donation to bury him, that he would be buried honorably instead of like a pauper. And I guess that's about all I could tell you about old Dan, except that he was a very fine old man. And I remember the last time I shook hands with him, and he reached out with that great big paw of his, and he took my hand, and he just about busted. And I said, "Easy, easy, Dan. I'm sorry, boy, I forgot. That was in Jimmy Hunter's store." Well, that's about all I can tell you about old Dan. 13.7, that was to East Kootenai. And then we lived in Nelson in 1989, but I've been all ever since then in this vicinity. I used to go away once in a while and look around and come back again, just short pops, looking at the rest of the country. And I was for years looking for a place where I could build myself a cattle ranch. And here it was right next door to us all the time.
How long have you been running this trap line?
Since 1944.
And Ben ran it before that.
Oh, yes. He trapped here in 1896.
1896.
Yeah, he told me he trapped here in 1896. That's when there was that old Hudson Bay Trail. He used to go up the old Hudson Bay Trail.
Well, that's Hudson Bay Trail. Did it, where it came up from Colville or something?
Well, yes, from Colville, Walla Walla, and Republic. I think that was when they wanted to make a fast trip to Montreal. Instead of going around the Horn, they used to put their boats, well, they took a shortcut up to the to Shields, and then they put their boats in at Shields, and they go up to Revelstoke. Then they went out of Revelstoke, I think it was 30 miles, and there was a creek they went up there, and then they had a portage of, I think they said 19 miles, and that put them on the Saskatchewan drainage. I don't think they used it as a major freighting waterway, but they used it. And I've heard both Ben and Mrs. Shaw talk about the old Hudson Bay Trail. In fact, I could show you parts of it yet. What they showed me was the Hudson Bay Trail.
It crossed the Dewdney Trail and went on up the valleys.
Yes, yes. See, the junction was right below my place there. And then it went up over the hill and down through Ben Shaw's place into Sheep Creek, and then followed up Sheep Creek. Yes, followed right through Sheep Creek. It didn't go up Lamb Creek. It went through Sheep Creek. I don't know where it went after.
Well, it would cross the new highway out here somewhere.
Yes, yes.
This be the one. Would it cross between here and Sheep Lake? Or
no, it would be just about Sheep Lake. That trail should go right close to Sheep Lake, and then it would take down Shields Creek to Shields. I don't know exactly where it is, but I know where parts of it are up Sheep Creek. In fact, I was up there one year with Paddy Kilroy, and we found a set of stones that were laid in an oval shape, I guess about 3 feet wide, about 7 feet long. It looked like somebody had marked out a grave there. They had fallen a bunch of cedar, and they used about a 7-foot piece of the tree that they cut, and 3 and 4 inch pieces of cedar. It was done a long time ago. I have no idea how long ago, because the sticks were very old, but you could see the pieces that were cut out. Sometimes they cut a stick that would be bigger than what they wanted, and they would cut off the butt. I always meant to go back and look that place over, but then Mary's went in there and logged on it. I think I know where it was, but I don't know if it's been turned up or not.
Now, you mentioned another character, was old Paddy Kilroy, I guess.
Yes.
When did he hit the country?
Paddy came here in 1928. He came in here first. He made poles for me, was when he came to Sheep Creek first. And he got here just before the Depression. He came here from Australia, although he originated in Ireland. He was a well-educated man. Started to be well-educated before the liquor got him down. He told me that he had started to study for the priesthood. I don't. And then he joined the army. He was in Mesopotamia and so and through there. And then he said when he found such a lovely clear stream, clean water at Sheep Creek, he just couldn't leave it. And he stayed with it. But lots of times I used to go over and visit with Paddy and take him over a little drink. He was a very interesting man when he had a few drinks, not when he was drunk or not when he was too sober, but just that little touch seemed to bring out the best in him.
You know a fellow named Dean?
No, I can't recall. What
No.
did he do?
Well, I think it's Dean. Cookie Lecluse found a cabin up here.
Oh, I know what you mean, up on Dominion Mountain.
Yeah.
I didn't know him. I have been there. I've been to that old cabin. I never found any sign of his workings or anything.
Well, Cookie found a bellows up there.
Yes,
Was he telling you about
yes,
it? Yeah.
yes. I know where it is.
Yeah.
It's,
Well, he's going to try to hawk it out of there with a horse.
That's a very old outfit. That cabin was old when I was there first. I went there with Fred Dory about 1928.
Uh-huh.
And that was old then. There was an old stone fireplace in that old building. And I would have thought there'd be nothing left of that now.
Well, the roof went down and everything underneath it was still all right, according to
Yes.
Cookie. It's quite amazing. Another fellow, Joel Coleman, used to live down at Paulson.
Cloman.
Yeah.
Yes. I didn't know him personally. I heard of him and I have seen him. But old Joe Cloman, he had claims out there. Oh, and so did old Singer. Singer had claims there. So did old Grafton. That was quite a bit of mining activity up there at one time.
Yeah, the Inland Empire.
The Inland Empire, yes.
Oh,
and there was old Griswold up there.
Yeah.
He was a fine old prospect.
I went up there 2 years ago with Ethel Lidley, and that's the first time she'd been there since she was 7 years old, and she lived up there at that
That's
time.
right. They used to live neighbors to us down here on Union Avenue. Yes, he just passed away a few years ago. He lived to be, and he had a very good memory.
2 years ago, I believe.
Yes, I think it was.
I went over to the museum seminar at Nelson last year, and we met this old chap that said that he had been a partner with Griswold at the Inland Empire, and asked how old man was, and I told him he just died. He said, "Oh, that was too bad." He said, "But there was a mine that made farmers out of a lot of miners."
Yes, there was somebody who was telling me here recently they were up prospecting up Sheep Creek, and they were looking for this iron deposit, and they couldn't find it. And old Griswold told them right where to look for it. And that's only about 3 years ago. He had a very good memory, and his mind was active right to the last, apparently. The Indians at Republic, her people, her father was a freighter. He used to have freight wagons, and they came through from way south of Walla Walla. They paid homage to, was it the Apaches that were south of there? I think it was.
Could be.
I think it was the Apaches. She told me that her father used to have a whole train of freight wagons going through there. Then I knew a few of these Indians were down at Northport. They used to come up and visit Mrs. Shaw periodically. And if you had a good buckskin or two, they'd gather them up and they'd trade you some gloves or gauntlets, or anything that you wanted for. There was one old girl in Northport, Gloria, we used to call her. I went down there one time, and I got some gauntlets from her and so on. And then I went down there not too many years ago, about 10, 12 years ago, and I was in Kendrick's Mercantile, and I asked the clerk there where I would find this Gloria. And he said, what was her other name? I said, I don't know. We just knew her as Gloria. I said, she used to tan buckskin. And she was sitting there with some other older Indian. And she says, we don't do that anymore. She says, we have taken too many of your ways. We throw the buckskins away the same as you do. But we couldn't get any more of them. But with those old gloves, they didn't seem to get your hands cold. They were like very good woolens. No matter how wet your gloves got, they didn't go like our leather. They were kept your hands warm, like Stanfield's old underwear. No matter how cold and wet you get, you're always warm and dry in Stanfield's.
Yeah. But when you, the Dudney Trail, there was practically no action on it after you was there still any traffic on the Dudney when you
Oh
came
no,
to? There was too
no,
many
the
years.
Dudney Trail went out of existence practically when they built the old Rossland to Cascade Highway.
Mm-hmm.
And then prior to that, the West Kootenai had a road that would take the business off of the old Dudney Trail.
Mm-hmm.
Old W.D. Wilson drove a team of horses and a buggy from Cascade into Sheep Creek in February one year. That was before, well, that'd be about 1921.
Mm-hmm.
And you see, everybody used the old West Kootenai roads. But he drove that buggy just to impress upon people that it was an easy road to keep up. There wasn't 17 feet of snow like there is up around Sheep Lake.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why they built the road where it is. But when I came here, the road was built across the mountains. It wasn't an old road then. We always referred to it as a new road.
Well, was there much mining at that time when you came here in that area? Was the Velvets operating? Was there anything else going?
When I first went to Sheep Creek, no, the Velvet was shut down at that time. It opened up again a couple times since.
Well, it's the oldest intermittent mining customer of the West Kootenai. I know it started way back in just before the turn of the century or just after, and they've been off and on ever since.
Yeah, it's the oldest of the Rossland group.
Yes.
Yes.
And
yes,
most of the others aren't operating anymore.
That's right. But you see, it's shut down for various reasons, like the Englishman who had it under his thumb, and his nephew was operating it. And then, as local stories go, his nephew married one of the ladies from one of our honky tonks. When the news of this reached dear old England, they promptly shut her down. And the graveyard shift went to work, but the day shift didn't. It was shut down like that. Well, then it lay dormant for a while, and then somebody else would pick it up. Some people figure that there's good ore there at depth. Eventually, it might make money.
How long was the longest it ever worked productively that you know of?
Oh, gee, I wouldn't know. I think that was in the early days. It ran for quite some time in the early days before I came here. That would be at the turn of the century. She ran for quite some years there. And they did a lot of work, and they got a lot of good machinery. There was a very fine old compressor, that is, for those days when I came there. A 3-stage, 4-stage compressor. It was quite the machine.
But there hasn't been a great deal of mining activity in the valley there.
No, these other things they find a little bit, but it's just doesn't seem to be there. It's indications that it's a mineralized zone, but that's just about all it is.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody has found it.
Well, the Evans family, were they there when you came?
Oh no. Mr. Evans, that would be the old man. He was the gardener for Blaylock when I came here.
I see.
And Cyril was he was just a young man. He was working at West Kootenai.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he worked at West Kootenai when I knew him first. And he was living in Rossland.
Is that the man that lives there now?
Yes.
Yeah. Not Harold Evans' brother, is it?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And it's Cyril that lives out there now.
Cyril lives in Sheep Creek, yes.
And his dad was a gardener for Blaylock, eh?
Yes.
When did they move out to the valley?
He came out there first, about 1928 or 29, early 30s, something like that. He came out there. They were cutting wood and selling wood in town. Wood used to be quite a business.
Mm-hmm.
And that didn't work so good. And then he folded it up and he came to town, and he had 14 acres in the south belt here. He used to sell a little milk around town, and he worked at the smelter. He went in there, I think, as a guard. Then he worked on Project 9 for...
Is that the place that Alec Peebles bought?
Could be.
Alec had 14 acres down there.
That sounds like 14.7 acres out by the Sunset. That would be it.
Street down Washington Street there.
Yes?
Just below, just south, just east of the railway track.
Oh,
The railway track runs right along the edge of it.
Washington Street. No, that wouldn't be it. That wouldn't be it. You had to take the road out past Union Avenue. You come down there. What's that street out there where that tunnel is under the road? There's a big culvert there.
Oh, that's the Nevada?
Well, then that would be the street.
Davis?
Davis Street. That
Davis
sounds like
Street.
it. Yes, you go down Davis Street and you go straight up that hill on the other side. Now that's where the old man Evans lived. And old Gregor lived there. He used to be the custom officer.
Well, that's up about towards Ross Thompson's place.
Yes, up the hill above there. And then you went out beyond there, and that would take you to this place where Cyril was.
Oh, I see.
But he sold it to somebody in town. I don't know who bought it. And then you see, and I say he went to work in Project 9. Then after a while, he went back out to Sheep Creek, and he just had this little stump ranch there. And then when the Andersons moved to town, he bought their place. I guess as far as it goes, I've lived in Sheep Creek pretty as long as any of them now.